Hi, my name is Jessica McCrane. In the following research article entitled Effects of the Second Language on the First, a study of ESL students in China, the author Xin Wang takes on the task of finding out if language is bidirectional. A lot of research has been done on first to second language transfer, but little on backward transfer. Wang sets out to add more conclusive evidence to this field. She asks 3 questions in reference to this study. As for ESL students, does there exist backward transfer of the knowledge of English causal clause to the use of Chinese causal clause? If there is, what is the relationship between the backward transfer and the subject's second language proficiency level? And in which type of task do backward transfer occur, and why? She proposes that language is bidirectional. When dealing with the English and Chinese causal clause, there will be backward transfer, where the second language has an effect on the native language. She aims to prove that this backward transfer is due to the proficiency level of the second language learner. And finally, she aims to prove that this will be seen when the ESL students follow the English causal clause structure. In this study, Wang enlisted 2 groups of people for her research. These participants were chosen based on their exposure to the English language. The first group consisted of 40 English language students in their 3rd year at Henan University. In this group, the participants had different proficiency levels, but they all had completed 6 years of English language study. The second group contained 30 workers at the Henan University Library who only spoke Chinese and had very little exposure to English. Both groups had 2 sets of tests to complete, one dealing with syntax, the other with discourse. To measure syntax in the second language to first language transfer, Wang created 20 different sentences. 12 sentences contain causal connectives, 6 set up one way and 6 set up the other way. The remaining 8 sentences use interfering pairs. The participants were asked to create causal sentences using adverbial clauses in their native language, Chinese. For the next test, in order to measure discourse, Wang came up with 6 pictures and asked participants to write a short story based on the images. They were told to use at least 3 causal clauses in their writing, again in Chinese. After all the tests were complete, Wang chose 20 people to be interviewed about their experience. When referring to the causal clause, English and Chinese have some differences. They both help us to show relation when communicating. However, Wang discusses that where they are placed and how many causal words are used depend upon the language. In English, the causal clause includes words like because, since, for that. In English, the causal clause is most commonly used after the main clause, but has flexibility to go before or after. Plus, only one word is used at a time. On the other hand, the Chinese causal clause is used in front of the main clause almost exclusively. Plus, they are allowed to use 2 words together as emphasis. In the first test group, there were 3 proficiency levels, L1, L2, L3. The L1 group consisted of 12 students with a primary level of proficiency. The L2 group consisted of 22 students in the middle level, and the L3 group consisted of 6 students at the advanced level. The results were gathered in 3 different ways. Firstly, Wang used Excel to study the findings of the syntax sentence test. She discovered that the proficiency level of the L2 participants were bidirectional when dealing with syntax. However, the L1 and L3 participants were not. These 2 subgroups used the Chinese language appropriately, proving that either in L1, the knowledge was not strong enough for a backward transfer to occur, or in L3, the participants were so advanced that they could easily distinguish between the 2. The L2 learners are believed to be following the least effort principle, in which Ellis describes the learner as choosing the second language structures over their native language. However, when dealing with discourse, all participants were able to differentiate between English and Chinese. When the participants were interviewed, they felt that during the syntax test, they were more aware of the sentence structure. This led them to transfer some of the second language into the first. To find if there was a relationship between backward transfer and proficiency, Wang utilized the Pearson-Cha square using SPSS 18.0. She found that in the area of discourse, there was no relationship, unlike syntax. To figure out what kind of relationships these are, she used the one-way ANOVA report. Here she showed that there was a difference between the L1 and L2 and L3 learners, but none between the L1 and L3 learners. This shows that the L2 learners perform differently, whereas L1 and L3 perform similarly despite their knowledge differences. Finally, when compared to the monolingual Chinese speakers, Wang found that the native speakers performed differently than the ESL students, and that they placed the causal clause correctly in both syntax and discourse. Xin Wang was successful in her hypothesis. She proved that backward transfer is possible, thus language is bidirectional. Backward transfer is closely related to the proficiency of the learner in the second language. Additionally, the L2 participants often use the adverbial clause after the main clause in Chinese causal clause, unlike the monolingual Chinese speakers, once again proving that based on the proficiency level, backward transfer does occur. Finally, it is important for educators to realize that a studied language and a native language do not become one language in the brain. Through this study, we can see that they neither combine nor are they 100% separate. Wang stated that languages are interconnected and interactive. This is why the first and second languages transfer back and forth. Plus, according to an earlier study, Cook believes that students shouldn't be taught to use a second language like natives, but instead they should note the similarities and differences between the two. This will help them to be multi-competent, in which they can switch between the two languages with ease, ensuring bidirectional transfer. After learning about Xin Wang's research study, what are your thoughts on the following questions? Do you believe backward transfer occurs between all languages? Have you ever experienced backward transfer in your own work? For further reference, please see Effects of the Second Language on the First, a study of ESL students in China by Xin Wang. This research study appears in Theory and Practice in Language Studies. If you would like a transcript of this presentation, please let me know and I will forward it to you. Thank you.